What if the worst customer you ever served became the key to unlocking your wildest dreams? For Esther Bowmont, a single sentence spoken in a language she wasn't supposed to know changed everything. This isn't a fairy tale, it's a story of a cryptic note, a private jet, and a test so demanding it could either break her or reveal who she was always meant to be. The perfume of Esther's life was stale coffee and burnt bacon grease. It clung to her hair, her fraying apron strings, and the weary lines etched into her 26-year-old face. She worked at the Astor Diner on Manhattan's Upper East Side, a place that pretended to be elegant but was cracked vinyl and smudged brass at its core. Every morning, she tied her apron, pasted on a smile that never reached her eyes, and slipped into the role of the perfect waitress, efficient, polite, invisible. No one guessed she once dissected Renaissance art or debated French philosophy at the Sorbonne. 4 years earlier, she'd been a rising scholar in Paris. Then came the phone call, her father's heart attack, the collapse of his business, and debts that swallowed her future whole. She left Paris behind, moving into a cramped Queens apartment with her friend Maya. Paris became a ghost, a dream she could no longer afford. "Order up," barked Saul the cook. Esther grabbed the plates and slid into the lunch rush with practiced grace. At table 7 sat her nemesis of the day, a pinstripe suit named Henderson. He had already sent back his orange juice for too much pulp, and now he snapped his fingers demanding his steak be cooked to perfection. "If it bleeds, I'm sending it back. If it's gray, I'm sending it back." "Got it, sweetheart?" She smiled tightly. "Perfectly clear, sir." As she moved through the diner, she noticed a man in the far corner. He wasn't like the usual crowd. No phone, no loud presence, just a quiet man in a gray cashmere sweater watching. His gaze wasn't leering, it was analytical, contemplative. She pegged him as a writer, maybe a professor. Every time she passed, she felt his eyes following. The door chimed and an elderly woman stepped in. She clutched her handbag, her eyes darting nervously. Dressed in a trench coat and silk scarf, she looked elegant yet lost. Approaching the host stand, she tried in broken English, "A table, s'il vous plaît." Kevin, the teenage host, just blinked. "A what?" Flustered, she switched to French, explaining she was lost, her phone dead, her tour group waiting. Kevin shrugged. "Sorry, lady." "Don't speak, whatever that is." Henderson sighed theatrically. "Oh, for heaven's sake. Let a man of culture handle this." He swaggered over, butchering French with grotesque confidence. The woman only grew more distressed. Esther, nearby with a bread basket, felt her patience snap. Not just at his mangled French, but at the smugness, the arrogance. She set the bread down, wiped her hands, and approached. The man in the corner, Alexander Sterling, leaned forward. Coffee paused midair. Esther smiled at the woman, and when she spoke, it wasn't the tired voice of a waitress. It was the fluent, lyrical French of her past life. "Madame, pardonnez-moi. May I help you?" "You seem lost." The diner fell silent. Henderson froze, his date staring wide-eyed. Even Saul peeked out from the kitchen. The woman's relief was immediate. She poured out her story, confusing the Met with the Guggenheim, panicked about her tour bus. Esther listened patiently, soothing her fears, then turned to Kevin. "Seat her at table 12, bring water and a menu. I'll call her tour guide." The woman, Madame Dubois, nearly wept with gratitude. Esther refused her money, simply wishing her a safe trip. When Esther turned back, Henderson's face was mottled red with humiliation. She gave him a professional smile. "I'll fetch your bottled water now, sir," and walked away. By the time she cleared Henderson's table, he was gone, leaving a pitiful $1 tip on a $100 bill. No surprise, but the man in the corner booth was leaving too. He slipped on a navy coat, caught her eye, and gave the smallest of nods. On his table, beside a drained coffee cup, lay a crisp $100 bill. Esther pocketed it, a thrill running through her. She thought that was the end of it, a small act of rebellion, a fleeting return to the woman she used to be, but it was only the beginning. The afternoon dragged on, refilling salt shakers, wiping ketchup bottles, pretending not to feel the weight of that man's gaze lingering in her memory. She was just Esther, the waitress. She didn't yet know her life had already begun to change. The flicker of her old life as a scholar felt like it had been just that, a flicker. By the time Esther's shift ended at 5 p.m., her feet throbbed and her soul ached in ways she no longer tried to name. Slinging her worn messenger bag over her shoulder, she pushed through the back exit, eager to vanish into the evening. "Hey, Beaumont," She turned. Saul, wiping his hands on a greasy apron, was holding something, a sleek black envelope. The quiet guy, corner booth, he came back a few minutes ago. Said he forgot to give you this. Told me to make sure you got it personally. Esther frowned, taking it. The envelope was unlike anything she'd ever held. Heavy cardstock sealed with a silver crest of stylized falcon wings. Weird, right? Saul muttered. Looked like a spy or something. Anyway, see you tomorrow. Esther stepped into the cool alley air, the envelope trembling in her hands. Under the dim glow of a security light, she broke the seal. Inside were 2 items. The first was a business card. Thick, black, minimalist. At the top, the embossed falcon. Below, in silver, Alexander Sterling, CEO, Sterling Innovations. Her breath caught. Sterling Innovations wasn't just a company. It was a global titan in aerospace, logistics, and artificial intelligence. And Alexander Sterling, a legend. A reclusive billionaire genius, rarely photographed, almost mythic. The quiet man in the diner. It seemed impossible. The second item made her heart stop. A reservation for a private Gulfstream G650 jet, departing the next day from Teterboro Airport. Destination, Paris. Passenger, Esther Bowmont. Tucked inside was a handwritten note on black stationery. Silver ink slanting boldly across the page. Miss Bowmont. Talent should never be wasted on serving mediocrity. A voice like yours belongs in Paris, not in a diner arguing over bottled water. A car will arrive at your address tomorrow at 10 a.m. Your seat will be waiting. This is not a request. It's an opportunity. Esther read the note once, twice, a third time. The city's noise dulled into a roar in her ears. This had to be a cruel joke. Henderson's revenge, maybe. But no, how could he know her address? And the expense. A private jet? She stumbled home in a daze, clutching the black envelope like a talisman. Inside the cramped Queen's apartment, Maya sat on the couch scrolling her phone. Reality TV blaring in the background. Whoa, you look like you've seen a ghost. Esther didn't answer. She laid the contents of the envelope on the coffee table. Card, ticket, note. Maya picked up the card. Her eyes widened. Sterling Innovations. Wait. She read the note, then stared at the ticket. Her mouth fell open. What is this? I don't know, Esther whispered, sinking into the couch. It's insane. He was there. The man I told you about. The one who left the $100 tip. Maya's shock twisted quickly into suspicion. She was pragmatic, a paralegal by trade, protective by instinct. Hold on. A strange billionaire sends you a private jet ticket to Paris? Esther, this is every red flag in the book. This is how horror movies start. Human trafficking. A cult. Some creepy pretty woman fantasy. You cannot be serious. I know, Esther murmured, raking her hand through her hair. It's crazy. But the note. Talent should never be wasted. He saw me. He heard me. He heard you speak French, that's all. Maya countered, pacing the room. For all you know, he's got some bizarre obsession. You don't know anything about him. Esther's voice dropped, quiet but firm. He's Alexander Sterling, one of the most famous businessmen in the world. The weight of his name hung in the air. For Esther, the envelope wasn't just an invitation. It was a doorway, one that could lead her back to the life she thought she had lost, or into something far darker. He's not some random creep, Esther said firmly. Rich people can be the biggest creeps of all, Maya shot back. How did he even get your address? That's not observant, that's stalker level. The question hung heavy in the air. Esther's mind raced. He must have followed her, or run her name through some database. The ease with which he had pierced the fragile veil of her anonymity was terrifying. And yet beneath the fear, something else stirred. Hope. Paris. The word itself ached inside her chest. The ticket wasn't paper. It was a doorway. A chance, everything. What if it's real? Esther whispered. What if it's a trap? Maya countered, arms crossed. You're throwing away your life here for a man you met for 5 seconds and a cryptic note. Be realistic. Esther glanced around the peeling walls of the apartment, the overdue bills stacked on the counter, the grease-stained uniform by the door. This was safe, predictable, and suffocating. The note had said, "This is not a request." It felt like a command, but also a challenge. To be more than what she had become. I think I have to go, Esther said finally. The words tasted foreign. I have to know. The next morning blurred with adrenaline. Esther called the diner and quit. Her voice shook as she left the message. But the fear of Mr. Davies' inevitable annoyance no longer mattered. For the first time in years, she felt free. Packing was surreal. What did one take for a clandestine trip to Paris offered by a billionaire? Worn jeans, faded t-shirts, a single black dress, the sum of her wardrobe. Maya watched, her face etched with worry. I ran a background check, Maya said. He's a ghost. No scandals, no tabloids, just business articles and philanthropy announcements. He's either a saint or very, very good at hiding things. Maybe he's just private? Esther tried weakly. Private people don't summon waitresses to Paris with anonymous notes, Maya snapped. I've put a tracker on your phone. Don't turn it off. Check in every 3 hours or I'm calling the embassy. Or the CIA. Esther hugged her friend, grateful for her fierce loyalty. I'll be careful. I promise. At exactly 10 a.m., a black Mercedes slid to the curb, silent as if it had materialized from thin air. The chauffeur opened the rear door. Miss Bowmont, we are ready when you are. The city blurred past the tinted windows. They bypassed the main terminal, pulling instead to a private hangar. Gleaming on the tarmac was a Gulfstream G650, a vision of power and grace. Inside, cream leather, polished mahogany, silver accents echoing the falcon crest. Esther was the only passenger. As the jet lifted into the clouds, New York vanished below. The diner, the apartment, her old life shrinking into haze. She was untethered, suspended between the world she knew and a terrifying unknown. A gourmet lunch, champagne fizzing like stars on her tongue. It all felt like a dream. And when, 7 hours later, the glittering lights of Paris spread beneath her, the dream only deepened. The Eiffel Tower pierced the night sky, a diamond needle. A lump formed in her throat. After 4 years, she was back. The jet landed at Le Bourget. No customs line, no chaos. Another black car, another silent driver. Past the Arc de Triomphe, down the Champs-Élysées. Paris unfolded in golden memory. But the car did not stop at a hotel. It turned into wrought iron gates down a tree-lined cobblestone drive and halted before a limestone mansion glowing warmly in the night. Welcome to Mr. Sterling's Parisian residence. Miss Bowmont. Her legs trembled as she mounted the steps. The massive oak doors swung open. Alexander Sterling stood in the marble foyer, dressed simply, his sharp eyes betraying fatigue. Younger than she expected. Late 30s, perhaps. Miss Bowmont, he said, voice calm, steady. Welcome to Paris. I trust your flight was comfortable. I don't understand any of this. I know, he replied, a faint smile brushing his lips. Clarity is the purpose of your visit. But for now, rest. We'll speak in the morning. As she followed the housekeeper upstairs, she glanced back. Sterling's gaze was the same as in the diner, analytical, unreadable. This was not a gift. It was a prelude. The next morning, sunlight streamed into a bedroom larger than her queen's apartment. A croissant and coffee waited on a tray, yet the beauty felt like a gilded cage. Dressed in her lone black dress, she entered Sterling's study. He set aside a tablet and gestured to a chair. You are here, he said, because I need a skill set I believe you possess. Before he could elaborate, the doors opened. A tall woman swept in, impossibly chic in a Dior suit. Her presence radiated authority. Alexander, you're late for the Lefebvre preliminary, she said crisply. Her eyes cut to Esther. Is this her? The waitress? Esther Bowmont, Alexander said evenly. My sister, Isabel Sterling, COO of Sterling Innovations. Isabel's smile was cold. A pleasure, though I don't quite understand the purpose of this experiment. Alexander's expression didn't change. Sterling Innovations is negotiating to acquire Maison Lefebvre, a French luxury house. Their matriarch, Geneviève Lefebvre, refuses. Lawyers, negotiators, none succeeded. They don't speak her language and you need a translator? Esther asked. No, Alexander said. I need a bridge. Someone who can honor French tradition, yet navigate American ambition. In the diner, I didn't just see a waitress. I saw intelligence, grace under pressure, and empathy. Qualities rarer than you imagine. Isabel's voice dripped with disdain. This is a $2.7 billion acquisition, not a social experiment. Yesterday she served pie. The word stung, but Esther held her ground. She would not be diminished. What exactly do you do? Isabel pressed, eyes narrowing. When you're not a waitress. Isabel's voice cut like glass. What hidden talents did my brother discover with his little private investigation? Esther's fears solidified. He had indeed looked into her. She steadied her voice. I was a student at the Sorbonne, art history and French cultural studies. I had to leave before finishing. Family emergency. Alexander nodded, unsurprised, as though it confirmed something. Isabel's reply was flat. So, a dropout. My sister lacks subtlety, Alexander said, throwing her a warning glance. Miss Beaumont, this is no vacation. Think of it as the strangest job interview of your life. I want you present at our meeting with Geneviève Lefebvre, not to negotiate numbers, just to listen, to observe, to build a bridge where others have failed. Esther asked the question hanging between them. And if I succeed? Alexander leaned forward. Then I'll create a role for you. Director of Cultural Integration for our European acquisitions. A career that uses your talents. I'll even fund the completion of your degree. Isabel cut in coldly. And if you fail, you'll be escorted back to the airport, put on the next flight to New York, and compensated for your time. That's all. It was madness. But the thought of returning to the diner, the grease, the endless grind, it felt worse than risking failure. She took a breath. When's the meeting? The next 48 hours were brutal. Esther was buried in financial reports, market analyses, and dossiers on the Lefebvre family. She learned Geneviève was 78, a widow who had ruled her fashion house with iron resolve for 4 decades. Geneviève despised fast fashion, despised marketing gimmicks. She was a purist who protected her legacy like a fortress. Every major acquisition attempt had failed. Isabel never missed a chance to remind Esther of her inexperience, quizzing her on obscure business terms. Do you even know what EBITDA means? No, Esther admitted. But I do know Madame Lefebvre's favorite painter is Fragonard, that her family's stitching technique is sacred to her, and that to her this isn't a transaction, it's her legacy. Maybe that's more important than earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. For once, Isabel was speechless. Esther clung to that sliver of confidence. The day arrived. A stylist dressed her in a discreet navy dress, respectful, understated. As their car pulled up to the Maison Lefebvre flagship store on Rue Saint-Honoré, Esther's nerves rattled. Alexander leaned toward her. Remember, you're not here to speak for me. You're here to listen for me. Inside, the air smelled of leather and jasmine. They ascended to a salon where Geneviève Lefebvre awaited in a Louis XVI armchair. Small, sharp-eyed, regal. Her 2 sons flanked her like sentinels. The meeting began with Isabel's polished presentation, charts, projections, talk of synergy and expansion. Geneviève finally raised a delicate hand. Enough, I've heard these words before. Empty numbers. You speak of my house as if it were a chain of cafes. You do not understand the soul, Isabel pressed back. With all due respect, madame, the soul doesn't fund growth in a global market. A chill filled the room. The sons bristled. The conversation collapsed into 2 opposing languages, profit versus heritage. And Esther watched. She noticed Genevieve's hand resting on a leather-bound book, the intimate portrait behind her. Not a famous work, but unmistakably in Fragonard style. Heart racing, she rose. Forgive my interruption. She walked to the painting, speaking in French, her accent warm and natural. This piece is remarkable. The brushwork reminds me of Fragonard, though more personal. A family piece? Genevieve's face softened. Your eye is good. That is my great-great-grandmother, painted by one of Fragonard's students. My most treasured possession. She's reading, Esther noted. Unusual for that era, unless she was a great intellect. She must have been extraordinary. Pride glowed in Genevieve's voice. She convinced her husband, a simple saddler, to craft the first handbag. For Queen Marie Antoinette, she was the true founder of our house, Esther turned back. Mr. Sterling's world is numbers and data. But he understands that your house is not built on numbers, it's built on vision. A woman's vision. He doesn't want to erase it, madame. He wants to preserve it, to give it a voice for a new century. The room fell silent. Geneviève studied Esther, then Alexander. Finally she spoke. Perhaps we can have tea next week. Just you and Mademoiselle Beaumont. The Sterling team erupted with relief. Isabel seethed, silent and furious. Alexander only looked at Esther with open admiration. It wasn't a trick, he told his sister. It was insight. The following week, over tea, Esther became the bridge Alexander had envisioned. She reframed digital expansion not as disruption, but as a modern atelier where stories of the artisans could live forever. By week's end, the deal was signed. Maison Lefebvre would join Sterling Innovations, its heritage protected, Genevieve herself given a lifetime board seat. That night, Esther stood on the balcony of Alexander's Paris mansion, looking over the glittering city. She was no longer the weary waitress who had stepped off that jet. Alexander joined her. "I owe you more than I can say." "The offer remains. Director of Cultural Integration, Paris Home, Education, all yours." Esther turned to him, her voice steady. "It's an incredible offer, but I have a counter. Don't give me a title. Invest in me. Make me lead the Lefebvre integration, with a budget, a team, and a performance contract. If I succeed, I want equity. A stake." For the first time, Alexander Sterling smiled, a true, brilliant smile. "A week ago, you served me coffee. Tonight, you negotiate equity on a multi-billion-dollar deal. Esther Bowmont, you prove me right in ways I never imagined." "You have a deal." They shook hands. It wasn't just a contract, it was the beginning of a new life. Esther was no longer a waitress who spoke French. She was a woman who had found her voice. And at last, she was home.